Hello everyone, welcome to Liam's Lifestyle. I'm your host Liam, aka Himbar, and today I have an interesting video to make for you. It is not about current news, so don't worry for any fans of Drizzt. I'm here to talk about ancient history, way back from around the time I was born, actually. But essentially the idea is Drizzt, Doerden, of course, written by someone other than R.A. Salvatore. Now, for those who stuck around, you might know I'm not a huge fan of R.A. Salvatore, so I was intrigued by this. I actually made a blog post about this, I believe, last month on my blog, Forgotten Realms Lyceum, but I'm here to talk to you about it again today. So this is not a theoretical thing of Drizzt had been created by a different author, what Drizzt would be like now. This is more of what if Drizzt had stopped being written by Salvatore, but they continued writing Drizzt novels because, well, he made money, right? Hence, he still does today. This can actually be found in two places, essentially. You can read a Drizzt story by someone other than Salvatore, and that is in Realms of the Underdark, which is an anthology edited by J. Robert King. And that story is by Mark Anthony, which is a funny name, but funny name to have at least. And there's another novel that almost got written that actually did get written, but you never can read it because it didn't get published, and that is Shores of Dusk. It's on the background of my screen here. And that is a novel that potentially would have fallen, I think, after Passage to Dawn and before The Silent Blade. In fact, The Silent Blade would not have existed. At some point, Salvatore is like, I'm done writing these. I think it was TSR still at the time was like, okay, we need to keep this going. Mark Anthony, you come in here. And that test came out in 1996 in Realms of the Underdark with a story that is, well, actually, I don't remember what's the title, so let me look real quick. But it is The Fires of Narbondel, which is the time clock spire thing in Menzoberranzan. So while being a Drizzt story, it's more of a Zach Nathan story, actually. All right, so it's again a test to see if he could write a novel in the series, and it follows Zach Nathan as Drizzt is a child in the story. We do get points of view from Drizzt, and Drizzt appears as a character. But I think this would fit maybe for those reading Homeland. But Zach, of course, is the weapon master of House Doerden. And this is about him essentially getting favor with the house to get an artifact, essentially, that's hidden in Menzoberranzan. And Drizzt is involved because he comes in contact with this artifact and even the goddess Loth. So the story itself is actually fine, I think. It's very much the cartoony evil drow of R.A. Salvatore, which I'm not a big fan of. So I think if you're a fan of R.A. Salvatore's depiction of the drow, which is essentially the depiction of drow these days, then you'll probably enjoy that. I'm not a huge fan of that, which is half the reason I don't really enjoy Salvatore's stuff that much, especially all the ones in the Underdark that deal with Menzoberranzan and Loth and other drow. But at the same time, it has some nice additions. I feel like Mark Anthony might just be a better writer than Salvatore. I'm not convinced Salvatore is a good writer. I never have been. But it doesn't suffer from too much action, which is nice. Now, Salvatore is a really good action writer. I'm not going to say he's bad at it. He just puts too much of it in his stories, in my opinion. Some people like that. Of course, I always sit here and say that even though I'm not a huge fan of Salvatore, I think he is good or probably enjoyable for readers, though I'd say there's better things out there, but he's probably enjoyable for readers are less experienced, whether they're younger or they just haven't read much fantasy or anything, really. So it has less action, and it also doesn't have that juvenile philosophy that Drizzt novels kind of sometimes get bogged down with. Sometimes it's okay. Again, it's always juvenile feeling, but sometimes it's very much cringeworthy, I guess, to say in modern parlance. But again, I think Drizzt fans would enjoy it, and you should try it. Again, that's Realms of the Underdark. And those that are not fans of Drizzt may want to try it anyways and see what it's like, and see potentially what Shores of Dusk may have been like. So again, you can read Drizzt written by someone other than R.A. Salvatore. Again, he was on like a little hiatus. I guess he didn't want to write it anymore. This is probably right around the time where he's at some point in the Cleric Quintet series. I'm not 100% sure because I didn't look at Cleric Quintet release series because I don't care about that series. But you can get some information on this Shores of Dusk novel. So I'm going to read a little bit of the promo that you can find. It's behind me right now. It says, "Memories fade like the evening sun. In the floating city of the Ur hyphen Drour, treachery flourishes. The legendary Drizzt, stripped of all memory, stumbles upon his subterranean stronghold, and must fight for his life as he struggles to rediscover his past. He soon discovers the evil that breeds upon Shores of Dusk." And it says on sale now. This promotion piece may have never been released. I don't know how this is presented, but I think this was 1997 as well. So, and now I saw this on a Facebook post for fans of the Realms originally, and there is a post on there that a fan included that is actually Mark Anthony talking about this, actually. So he says this is some response he gave to a fan on the Shores of Dusk novel, because, again, this promotional material had been out there, but the novel never came out. It says, "Dear Brian, I'm constantly surprised how many emails I still receive regarding Shores of Dusk. It seems a number of people remain curious about what happened to the book. So yes, feel free to post this reply to your mailing list if you think others will be interested. The story behind Shores of Dusk and its eventual cancellation is really pretty simple, at least from my end of things. A few years ago, after he began writing for Del Rey, Salvatore was unable to come to an agreement with TSR to keep writing the Drizzt series. I'm not aware of the exact reasons for this. You'd have to ask Bob about that. One factor might have been a no-compete clause in his contract with Del Rey. This is quite common. Publishers usually want their authors to write only for them. There may have been other factors, such as compensation. At the time, TSR was in pretty dire financial straits. Of course, TSR was going to get bought by WotC around this time. Regardless, Brian Thompson, then executive editor at TSR, I haven't heard very good opinions about this guy, but I've read some of his stuff. It's not terrible. At least what I've read hasn't been. Approached me to write a new novel starring Drizzt. Brian was, of course, familiar with my writing, as I had done several novels for TSR, and he had previously assigned me to write a novella set in the Drizzt milieu as a sort of test, which I apparently passed: Fires of Narbondel and Realms of the Underdark. I'll be honest, writing about Drizzt was not my idea, and it was not something I would have sought out myself, but Brian asked me, and so I accepted. I wrote what I thought was a fun and interesting novel, trying to be as sensitive to the characters and worlds Bob Salvatore had created as I possibly could. Without doubt, the most difficult book I had ever written for TSR, as I worked hard to stay true to Bob's earlier novels. It's also made difficult by the fact that Bob was clearly unhappy that someone else was writing a novel about Drizzt. Not that I could really blame him, but therein lies the danger of writing in a licensed world like the Forgotten Realms. Anyway, as things turned out, just months before Shores of Dusk was to be published, TSR was bought and saved from bankruptcy by Wizards of the Coast, or Wizards of the Coast, so he spells it here anyways, so we'll forgive him that. Brian Thompson was replaced as editor by Mary Kirchhoff, who had headed up the book department before him. She managed to work out a deal with Del Rey that allowed Bob Salvatore to write for both publishers, and Bob was still interested in writing Drizzt novels. With Bob back, there was no need for my novel, and so the project was canceled. I did get paid for it, but obviously only a fraction of what I would have gotten had it seen publication. It was disconcerting, of course, to have the book canceled so close to publication. Ads for it had already appeared in Dragon magazine, but I can't blame Mary for her decision. The Drizzt novels were TSR's biggest asset, and a Drizzt novel by Bob Salvatore is certainly worth more than one by anyone else, no matter how well written or researched it might be. So I bear TSR WotC no hard feelings in the matter. In fact, later on, Mary Kirchhoff offered me a Forgotten Realms trilogy, which was very kind of her. However, I had to turn the project down. By that time, I had sold my own fantasy series to Bantam Spectra, and I had neither time to write a trilogy for TSR nor could I legally do so, given the no-compete clause in my own contract with Bantam. And the fact is, I'd much rather write novels set in my own world, start my own characters. So everything turned out well. In the end, Bob Salvatore got to keep writing Drizzt, which I'm sure his fans appreciate, and I got to write my own fantasy series. It's doing well, by the way. The third of the 6 books. Okay, I don't really care, to be honest. I hope that answers your questions. Feel free to pass the word along to others, and if you have any further questions about Shores of Dusk, please direct them to Mary Kirchhoff at TSR. WotC. All the best, Mark Anthony. Mark, this is a response added by James Louder as well, which gives more context, actually corrects Mark here. It says, Mark is incorrect in both his guesses here that the reason Salvatore and TSR had parted ways for a time was either because of a non-compete clause or because of financial demands on anyone's part. The non-RAS Drizzt book assigned was offered to writers as a way for TSR management to punish Salvatore over a non-financial business disagreement, which is pathetic, but it is what it is, I guess. So that's interesting stuff to me, at least. I feel like, again, I liked Anthony's take on it. Again, it's very faithful to Salvatore's version of the Drow and the Underdark, which I'm not a huge fan of, but the story itself does manage to be entertaining because it doesn't fall into some pits that I feel like Salvatore does fall into. Would Shores of Dusk be any good? I'm not sure. This amnesia trope seems like it maybe would work out as something to do with Drizzt, if a new writer was taking, the reins. But again, I'm not sure if that novel is any good, if we'll ever see the light of day. I would be interested in reading it if there's a copy floating around somewhere, someone can get me a manuscript. No, but again, I'm not sure it would be that good still. But it's interesting to speculate because this could still happen. Now, not TSR, but WotC has essentially killed their novel line as of like 2016. They let some stuff be published with their approval, but it's not by them anymore. WotC does not publish anything. Hence why Drizzt is still around, because Drizzt makes some money. Now, of course, these other novels are making them making them money too, but apparently not enough for Hasbro, which is dumb. And another video in itself, in fact, I made a video on it once and I deleted it. But it's essentially, there's no novels being published, with very few exceptions, that like the Dragonlance stuff coming out, Drizzt coming out, and the 2 movie tie-ins. And then there's one that's kind of a test by J. Lee Johnson, who wrote one of the movie tie-in novels that's coming out next year. But again, different topic. So, but it could still happen. I feel like maybe, Drizzt turns into a super franchise, even though the Forgotten Realms is a franchise, and Drizzt is just the worst part of it, but the most popular. Well, not the worst part. I should be fair. There's probably something worse, but yeah, it'll be interesting because it could still happen. There could still be a day that we're writing Salvatore pastiche, and other people are trying their hand at Drizzt writing, which would be a very interesting day. It's one I hope never happens because I want Drizzt to end already. We're approaching 40 novels, I think. It would have been interesting to see that it would have stopped right around 10. Anyways, this is Liam from Liam's Lyceum. Let me know what you think of. Let me know if you've read The Fires of Narbondel or had heard of Shores of Dusk, I guess, down below. I'm interested to hear what your thoughts are. If you like Mark Anthony, I actually have not read anything by him besides The Fires of Narbondel. I don't think. Maybe I have, but if I have, I don't remember it. But I will read more, especially the other Forgotten Realms stuff eventually. So, Liam from Liam's Lyceum again. I will catch you next time.